Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Conquest Source studio. Welcome to the show. So, spoiler season is off to the races right now. Horses, Outlaws, Thunder Junction races. I don't know. Does that little like thing work? Does that work? I don't know. Anyways, some of these cards are absolutely insane already, and one spoiler that came out, it's like I did not think that'd be happening. No way. So with all that said, let's jump into the cards. So, first up, let's talk about Annie Flash the Veteran, a 4/5 human rogue with Flash. Wow, Wizards right there. Well done on the flavor right there. Annie Flash has Trample. Wait, no. Flash. Yeah. 4/6 mana and Naya. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast or return target permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, tapped. Whenever Annie Flash becomes tapped, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. So, some interesting things happening here. First of all, enters the battlefield if you cast it. Wizards, you did this right in this, way. You did it the correct way. You didn't say, like, if you cast it from your hand. Myojin, Wizards, goodness gracious. Okay, so having a cast requirement is completely fine on a commander, especially with one with an ability that is pretty easily usable and abusable. I'm sure there's some infinite combos that you could do with this if it wasn't, a cast requirement on that ETB. So yes, sometimes I'm completely fine with Wizards throwing on the cast requirement. I'm pretty much never fine with them being like, if you cast it from your hand. It's a commander. Command zone. Thank you. But yeah, being able to bring something back with mana value 3 or less, even if it's just a land, this commander can just be ramp, which I guess for 6 mana is not that great. But again, this could be a commander that you have ways to bounce it back to your hand with like a Blood Clock and stuff like that to keep recasting it, have some cost reduction, maybe with like Gore Claw, that kind of thing. Keep getting more and more value out of this. And yeah, again, plenty of permanents out there that are quite good that cost 3 or less. I mean, just name like one like Ghostly Prison, I guess, came to mind right there. There you go. It's kind of like Sun Titan, but essentially on ETB cast, so you can't abuse it with a blink effect. So there you go. Hence, like the cast requirement. That being said, on top of that, though, and I think the spicier part of this commander, when Annie Flash becomes tapped, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. So Impulse Draw 2 on tap. Now, obviously that works with like, hey, I attack with this as long as you don't give it Vigilance. You can go do tap and attack. There you go. Also, though, utilizing an aura or an equipment that allows this to actually just tap, like, I think Paradise Mantle would be one, essentially, where it's like, hey, you can tap for any mana. You can tap it, Impulse Draw 2 without sending it into danger, then utilize those cards to do some pretty cool things. I mean, I can already see kind of a, not broken strategy, but crazy storm off the wall strategy where it's just like, oh, okay, cool. I tap this with my Paradise Mantle for a mana. Oh, looks like I got some untap effects, including a Vitalize off the top of my library. I'll untap all my creatures, including my Mana Dorks, which I now tap all them. And then I tap all those creatures with activated abilities, and I get to, exile 2 more at the top. Oh, look, another untap thing, like 2 arms. Cool, I'll untap all my creatures, do it again. Not necessarily infinite, but yeah, you could definitely get toward that. So you can just do really crazy things with this. I mean, I don't think most decks are going to go in that direction, but you never know. Different ways to play it with, casting cards from exile, kind of like any of the non-black, Prosper cards essentially can work really great with this if you're going in that direction. It's a very interesting commander. Yeah, you can take it in a couple of directions. I'm sure there's some broken things that you can do with it as well. A very cool card. And of course, it has Flash. So yeah, your opponents have to take that into account. If they're like, oh, I'm going to attack this player, and you're like, aha, I flash my commander in for the command zone and get this other thing from my graveyard back into play. Ha ha ha. And their opponent's like, no. Anyways, let's move on. So we got Giza the Hellraiser. What a name. A 4/4 human warlock with ward 2, pay 2 life. Wizards with the warding. Goodness gracious. We solved hexproof. Throw ward on everything. It's a bit obnoxious. But yeah, 2 and also 2 life is a good amount to have to pay to actually target this. Anyways, for 3 black. Skeleton and zombies you control get +1 have menace, so a zombie, skeleton, tribal commander. There you go, I guess. +1/+1 menace is nice. It's a good effect right there. A nice little pump, but also a way to potentially get creatures through. Whenever you commit a crime, create 2 tap, 2/2 black and blue and black zombie rogue creature tokens. Ability triggers only once each turn. Yeah, that's quite interesting. Only triggers only once each turn. Wizards, come on, really? Do we really need to limit things in that way? Maybe. I mean, I'm sure there's some broken things that you could do with this if it was like, yeah, I mean, okay, sure, you could like get Phyrexian Altar out and then like sacrifice those zombies, or like Ashnod's Altar, sacrifice those zombies that you're making to utilize an activated ability, which can probably target something, so you can get another one, and sure, if you're building a deck in that way, I don't really think that needs to be limited to once each turn. Maybe that's just me, though. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on that. I don't think it needs to be limited in that way. I probably should say what committing a crime is. Targeting opponents, anything they control, and or cards in their graveyards is a crime. So, yeah, if you have repeatable effects in play that you can, like, dump mana into, that can be very good. Still, I mean, being able to have repeatable effects that can actually, you know, target again, and again can be great because, yeah, if you just do that, again, only triggers once each turn, not just on your turn. So, with each trip around the table, if you commit a crime on every single turn, which is a funny phrase, commit a crime on every single turn, yeah, you get to have, what, 8 zombies into play? They are tapped. Keep that in mind. You could also take advantage of, like, rogue synergies if you really want to, but more so zombies, because, yeah, I mean, they're already going to be, what, 3/3s with Menace? You get 6 total power, 3/3s with Menace, so that's very powerful. So, again, maybe that's why it's limited, I guess. But come on, the fun Johnny things where it's like, this works with this, which works with this, which works with this. Let the Johnnies have their fun, Wizards. Let them do broken things. Okay, anyways, I can see this one being quite popular. Again, players out there, like, I mean, is there a skeleton tribal commander necessarily, really, already? If not, this could definitely be the head of a skeleton tribal deck just itself. But also, like, a skeleton zombie tribal kind of conglomeration seems like quite a bit of fun. So, yeah, I can definitely see us going a bunch of different directions. Zombies is one of the most popular tribes out there for a tribal deck. So, yeah, quite a good piece for kind of zombie decks out there, being a great anthem, great lord, and also, of course, a great card, you know, just as the commander itself. Moving on. Great Train Heist. So if you haven't seen my previous episode, make sure you check it out. But we got brand new cards that are spree cards, and that's why the mana value, which is a red with a little plus sign next to it, might seem a bit weird if you haven't seen that. Anyways, spree means choose 1 or more additional costs. Oh, 3. So I will say that actually with these cards, I've actually read through some of them, and I'm trying to put this episode together really quick. So I kind of like just going off the cuff too with these and just giving you my immediate reaction. And I didn't read through this card. And I did not realize that this has 3 options, which is quite spicy because previously it was more like fuse cards where there was like 2 options essentially. This now showing us that we have apparently on spree cards potentially up to 3, maybe even more with future ones. If you add 2 and a red to your mana, untap all creatures you control if it's your combat phase or combat phase after this one. Okay, so this is already just better than aggravated. Not aggravated assault. What's the one? Whatever the one is where it's like, yeah, 4 mana and you get an extra combat. Crazy good. +2. Creatures you control +1/+0 and gain first strike until end of turn. Nice. Choose a red, choose target opponent. Whenever a creature you control does combat damage to that player this turn, create tap treasure token. Okay, all great options. My goodness. I mean, okay, if you utilize all the mana, right? Because again, you can choose 1 or more additional costs. You can spend whatever you want on that plus that additional red. That is going to be what? 7 mana in total for all these. By doing that, you give an extra combat. You get +1/+0 and first strike to protect your creatures and to make them hit more. And also you get free treasure tokens when your creatures are hitting. Essentially, they're tapped, which finally Wizards is learning, it seems like, and actually making tapped treasures so you can't utilize them right away. Hence why they have the tap ability to sacrifice them in the first place. But Wizards just made them more so like gold tokens, which you can utilize right away, which is very powerful. But yes, being able to essentially have them tapped makes them not a lot. I mean, they're less powerful, a lot less powerful. They're still incredibly powerful, but not being able to just utilize that mana again on that same turn is a good change to these treasures. Still, Wizards, though, stop with the treasures. We don't need any more. Thank you. That being said, yeah, this being an extra combat spell for 4 mana, a pump effect potentially for 3 mana that is also protecting your creatures with that first strike, or just 2 mana if you already have like a set army that you're like, yeah, let me just swing through and hit you for a lot and then get a ton of, you know, treasures off of it. Like if you have like Kranko deck and you've got like 30 goblins in play, yeah, that could be definitely something to utilize. But yeah, also just getting all those extra combats with that too to get double the treasure of that would be great too. Yeah, very, 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 very good card. I'd say typically you're probably going to throw on that extra red just to get those treasures because then it'll probably pay for itself and then pay for it and then some. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely going to be scenarios where you're like, okay, I'll spend 4 on this, I'll spend 2 on this, I'll spend 7 on this, whatever it's going to be, best situation you're in. I kind of like, again, everything is just kicker adjusted essentially is the joke, right? But I like this kind of, I like Spree. I like Spree so far. So it's interesting to see kind of how this is going to play out. Next up, Kellen the Kid, a 3/3 human fairy rogue with flying and lifelink for 3 mana and Bant. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, you may cast a permanent spell with equal or less mana value from your hand without paying its mana cost. If you don't, you may put a land card from your hand on the battlefield. Okay. Again, another one I really read through before putting it in the episode, and yeah, that seems incredibly powerful. Essentially, any single time, again, you're not in red, so you don't have the impulse draw, thank goodness, because that's pretty, not broken, I wouldn't say, but absurdly powerful. There are plenty of other ways to cast things from anywhere other than your hand. Like, again, like Future Sight, like casting cards off the top of your library. Again, anywhere other than your hand. It doesn't say like from exile. So if you have like Future Sight in play, you cast cards on the top of your library, you're like, ha 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 ha, play this card. Oh, cool, I get something free out of my hand. Oh, I don't have anything free. Okay, cool, I just get a land into play. And again, you play a land from your hand on the battlefield. Does not say tapped. You can utilize that mana right away. Quite powerful. You could just do like landfall with this kind of a commander, do some very powerful things with it. Like landfall, other casting synergies, like casting things from exile, casting things from top of your library, casting things from your graveyard as well, like flashback, jumpstart, those kind of things as well. Yeah, you can do some incredibly powerful things with this. And again, of course, yeah, not just getting those lands in play, obviously, but the potential for this is even bigger because you're like, oh, okay, Future Sight, cool, I got this like 7 mana thing on top of my library. Okay, I cast that off the top of my library. I get anything isn't lesser than, equal, or lesser. So again, 7 or less out of my hand for free. Cool, I'll just play this. Great. Yeah, that's it's very, very powerful. And it is cast, so you get any kind of cast triggers as well. That being said, it can be countered as well out of your hand. Seems like a very, very powerful commander. It takes Bant in a somewhat different direction. I don't know if I really like that it's like, hey, you just get a land from your hand on the battlefield if you like whiff on the other part, because it's already powerful without that. Players out there don't really like whiffing, potentially, though. Many players don't, which is why Wizards like changes a lot of things over time that makes it less likely to whiff with a lot of things. Like, if you didn't do it, scry 1. I understand that, but like getting a land from your hand on the battlefield is an incredibly powerful thing. I mean, this has kind of vibes of, oh gosh, now I'm forgetting the name of the one, the Eldraine commander that's in Bant as well. Yeah, it has some of those kind of vibes. I'm not saying it's that powerful, but it's a very powerful commander. This is a very, very, very powerful commander. Next up, Magna is back, the Horde Master, a 2/2 Dwarf Berserker for 2 mana in red. Whenever you commit a crime, create tap treasure token. This ability triggers only once each turn. Again, Wizards like, once each turn, we've solved it. Yeah. Sacrifice 3 treasures. Create a 4/4 red Scorpion Dragon creature token with flying and haste, active on sorcery. I mean, again, I guess in this case, I'm like, yeah, sure, limit it to once each turn because treasures are broken. Broken, Wizards. Stop with the treasures, please. At least gives you an interesting way to utilize those treasures. Previous Magna's like, hey, go tutor things out, including dragons or artifacts, I believe, for 5 treasures. This is sacrifice less treasures, 3, and you get a Scorpion Dragon, which is terrifying of a thing. 4/4 with flying and haste. Lovely. Active on the sorcery. Wizards, why? Why do we need that limitation? Why? 2 things I don't like, and this card's got both of them. Triggers only once each turn, and activate on the sorcery. I don't like those at all, typically. And what's the point of that? Just so you can't, like, on your opponent's turn, if they're going to swing at you, like, utilize your treasures as a resource to sacrifice them for a blocker? Why? Anyways, though. Yeah, I mean, having repeatable things to commit crimes in play, like, I could just see with this kind of a commander, like, pingers in play, like some Tims. Like, you're just like, okay, tap, commit a crime by either targeting the opponent's face or anything they control, ping it, make a treasure. Again, this limited once each turn, so again, with each trip on the table, you can get 4 treasures, which equals potentially 1 Scorpion Dragon, but you've got other ways to make treasures too, to get your Scorpion Dragons. Any kind of dragon pumping effects too. What's the one that costs 4? Can't remember the name of it. It's like, it costs 4, it's an enchantment, +3/+3 Crucible of Fire, is that it? Making 7/7 dragons instead for 3 mana, or 3, I say 3 mana, but it's like 3 treasures, which is 3 mana. Basically, you're trading it off. Still, a pretty powerful effect. Again, it is limited mono red, but a pretty powerful effect. Some very spicy builds could happen around this one. And having like both Magnas in play could be some very, very cool synergies where it's like, hey, when your creatures become tapped, I think it's dwarves become tapped, right? You get extra treasures. And also when you now commit crimes, you get treasures. It's interesting. Wizards, get your foot off the gas pedal with treasures, number 1. Number 2, stop with the limiting things once each turn because Johnnies love not having that text. And also, active sorcery is boring. Okay, that's it. Next up, Rakdos, the Muscle. 6/5 Demon Mercenary with Flample for just 5 mana. Gosh, again, years ago when it's like, wow, we've got a 6/6 dragon with flying. How much does it cost? 9! These days it's like, no, 6/5 Flample with 5. Oh, is that it? No, that's just the start. No. It's got so much more text. Whenever you sacrifice another creature, exile cards equal to its mana value from the top of target player's library until your next end step. You will play those cards of add and mana of any type you spend to cast those spells. Sacrifice another creature, Rakdos. The muscle gains indestructible of turn. Tap it. Wizards. Activate only once each turn. Wizards. Boring. Okay, I mean, the card's not boring, but why limit that? Because, like, you don't want to give someone, like, the free sacrifice outlet with this, I guess. You want just, like, is, like, one time with this. But still, I mean, okay, sidebar real quick. Here's a scenario. I've got this in play. I've got an opponent who casts a Swords of Plowshares. I sacrifice a creature in response to save it. I guess Swords of Plowshares wouldn't do that. I got an opponent who casts something that would destroy this. Let's go back. That would destroy this. I sacrifice a creature to destroy it. Another player casts a spell in response to that to destroy this. Okay, I guess, again, it costs like 2 spells to do it. It's a scenario that doesn't happen all the time, but, like, why limit it to I can only activate this once each turn? Boring, Wizards. Boring. Why? Johnnies need to be able to have fun. Let Johnnies have fun and do broken things. Okay, but anyways, getting another sacrifice outlet is not that difficult in play. Obviously, you got plenty of white runs like, Viserys here, etc., etc., etc. Having those in play is great. Being able to sacrifice creatures is great. You can do some pretty brutal and I'm sure broken things with this. Being able to get, again, potential value out the top libraries. Keep in mind, again, it is equal to its mana value, not power. Okay, it is not power. It's nothing else. It's mana value. So, like, if your strategy is like, haha, I'll get all these tokens in play and sacrifice them and mill someone out. No, because typically tokens don't have a mana value. That being said, yeah, if you're getting creatures into play that can maybe get themselves back into play, like a Reassemblinging Skeleton, etc., you can utilize those again and again and again with this in combination to get a lot of temporary card advantage. Again, with that Impulse Draw, again, off of your library, off of opponents' libraries. I think the spiciest build around this one, though, is literally just trying to mill players out with Rakdos Mill, which I think would be so spicy. Because, again, I mean, sometimes it's like, yeah, exile the cards at the end of the turn, shuffle them, put them on the bottom library, whatever it is. Put in library, bottom library, any order is typically what it would be. But like with this, it's like, no. It's straight up Impulse Draw. It's anyone's library, so you can just permanently get rid of things off the top of opponents' libraries, which is quite spicy. So yeah, I think Rakdos milling opponents out can be quite fun, quite good. You probably want some reanimation in there. You want to get a lot of big creatures out, sacrifice those. You get like Wall of Blood someone for like 30, right? Kind of fun, right? That. But yeah, being able to get a ton of things off the top of opponents' libraries for a lot of value could be really fun. Having a lot of ramp in this deck as well could be very good. Yeah, just some very spicy things. Of course, basically any kind of like prosper interactions are like when you're casting spells from anywhere in your hand, extra value, or from exile, extra value. Those will work well with this. Players tend to like prosper, so I'm not surprised that they made another kind of like prosper adjacent but in a different way kind of commander. Also, it's a 6/5 flampler, so you could just take opponents out with commander damage if that doesn't work, right? 4-shot KO. You give a double strike 2-shot KO, and you get double strike plus 5 power, a 1-shot KO if you really want to go in that direction. Anyways, next up. Slickshot Show Off. That's tough to say. 1/2 Bird Wizard for 2 mana in red with flying and haste. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it gets +0 until end of turn. Plot for 1 in a red. Now, I can't remember. I'm sorry about this because there's been so many miscellaneous like leaks and spoilers before this. If they've actually shown off plot before, or if it's just from leaks. But if it's been just from leaks, this is confirmed now. Congratulations. You may pay 1 in a red and exile this card from your hand. Cast it as a sorcery on a later turn without paying its mana cost. Plot only as a sorcery. Basically, this is, people have joked before that we've already had this because, like, there's a foretell card. I think it was an artifact creature that has, like, foretell for 0. So you're like, okay, I foretold it. I can play it for 0. It's, like, the exact same thing. But, yeah, it's interesting because, obviously, again, we're getting, like, more of these kind of cards that, like, when you do something from exile, when you cast a card from somewhere outside your hand, you get these effects. So being able to get this in play can do some really good things. Obviously, this, I have no bearing on other formats. I am not a modern player. I'm not a legacy player, not a standard player, but I feel like this could be pretty good in other formats because it's pretty aggressive, right? A 1/2 evasive, hasty creature that can, get pretty massive pretty quickly with casting non-creature spells. Yeah, that seems pretty good. When it comes to commander, like outside of like wizard decks maybe, or like a bird deck, I guess. I don't know if you're really considering this one. Like, sure, you could have like a storm finisher, but there's like better storm finishers out there. Moving on, we went from having one Gitrog for the longest time to, like, a lot of Gitrogs very quickly. I guess this is, the third one probably? Anyways, Gitrog's adorable. Look at that smile. the Gitrog Ravenous Ride, a 6/5 frog horror mount that has trample and haste that costs 5 in Golgari. Whenever it deals combination to a player, you may sacrifice a creature that's saddled this turn. If you do, draw X cards, put X land cards from your hand on the battlefield, tap where X is that sacrifice creature's power. That's powerful. Saddle 1. So saddle, a reminder for that. I believe I addressed this. Well, I addressed it in the last episode. I can't remember again if it's like from leaks or spoilers, but basically what it is kind of like crew, but for creatures that are already creatures. So not like turning a vehicle into a creature, but it's just like you can just basically crew it. And when you do, you get whatever trigger it has. This one is deals combination to a player. So I think previously it's been attack triggers. This is interesting that you have to actually get through with the creature, which makes sense because that is a very, 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 very powerful effect. You are in 2 colors that have access to ways to make creatures very powerful very quickly, or just getting creatures out that have a lot of power very quickly. I mean, there's like that 11/10 that's in Golgari that has like a major downside on attack or block for 4 mana, but like you don't need to do that. Or like Beast of Burden, I guess, could just be 1, 2. Or any of those ones that are like power equal to the number of creatures in graveyards. Those kind of cards too. Basically, my entire Hotline Fling deck, essentially. You're just flinging giant creatures. So essentially with this, though, yeah, being able to just get something massive in play, saddle it up, put it on, it's just funny because, again, Gitrog's like, it's a large creature, but again, if you put like something the size of a skyscraper on top of it, just like riding a little saddle is hilarious. Deals counter to players, so you do have to get through. It does have trample to do so, though. Sacrifice that creature. When you do, draw an absurd amount of cards. Yes, please. Put X land cards in your hand on the battlefield tapped. That is absurd. I don't think they needed that part. I really don't think they needed that part for this to be an effective, very, very, very good card. Yeah, being able to just say, oh, okay, cool. I'll sacrifice my 10 power creature, draw 10. Cool. I can get, whatever. I have 7 lands in my hand maybe at this point. Dump all those into play and just be so far ahead on ramp for my opponents that they're never going to catch up. And also we're playing Commander, so they can't destroy my lands because that's a no taboo. So yeah, being able to just do that very quickly. This seems like a very, I'm not going to say broken Commander, but one that's absurdly powerful. Also keep in mind, I believe you can oversaddle, which is just a funny phrase. Kind of like crewing, you can over-crew something. I believe you can oversaddle. With that, that wouldn't really help you if it's just hitting once, but if you give this double strike, first of all, hitting opponents for 12, ouch, it's a 2-shot KO then. But also, again, you would get that trigger twice. And again, it does say, you may sacrifice a creature that's saddled this turn, so you could just sacrifice 1 the first time, 1 the second time. Again, if you saddle with 2 creatures and draw even more cards, get even more lands into play, be more even absurd. It does put those lands on battlefield tap, thank goodness. So, I mean, it slows you down just a little bit. Yeah, a very, 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 very powerful creature. Goodness gracious. Next up, we've got Tiny Bones joins up. A legendary champ for a single black mana. Enters the battlefield. Any number of target players each discard a card. Mean! So, I mean, obviously you're not picking yourself most of the time. If you got like a Madness deck, sure, pick yourself. Whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, any number of target players each mill a card and lose 1 life. We don't need to keep giving Eddie more and more cards for the legendary tribal deck, okay? Wizards, what are you doing? Yeah, if you have legendary tribal deck, this definitely makes sense in some of them. Just a single black mana to make players discard. Typically, you're not going to utilize those kind of cards in any deck outside of discard decks. But that being said, if you have all legendary creatures, like, again, I said Joda earlier. If you got your Joda deck and it's got all legendary creatures, wow. I mean, play legendary creatures. You're going to have each of them mill cards. Probably doesn't matter all that much with synergies, but losing life every single time legendary creature comes into play under your control, that can be quite powerful. Not quite as powerful as the Vraska one. Make sure you check that up in my previous episode out where I talked about that one. But yeah, I mean, legendary tribal decks can consider this. Discard decks can consider this too. Next up, here we go. I did not expect to see this, but maybe some of you did who are following the story a bit more closely. And by a bit more closely, I mean at all. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, we're on this plane. Oh, goodness, saw this card. Jace is here? Oh, and it's a 2-mana Planeswalker. Here we go. So, Jace Reawakened apparently was in disguise as Ashiok. Let me know in the comments below if that's correct. That seems to be what the thing is showing. Anyways, 3 starting loyalty, Ledger Planeswalker, Jace. 4 blue. You can't cast a spell during your first, second, or third turns of the game. So again, it is kind of like those other 2-mana Planeswalkers where it costs 2 mana. It's so low to ground, like Tybalt, which was terrible, And then was it red in 6, which is very good in other formats? Not necessarily. Planeswalkers just are inherently not nearly as good in Commander. And then we'll get comments right now of people screaming, my Super Friends deck is super good. It's like, yeah, okay, like in a mass amount of quantity. Sure, with a mass amount of board wipes, that's not all that much fun to play against sometimes, depending on the play group. Please don't yell at me in the comments below. But yes, this one does cost very little. There are ways to cheat into play. Again, we already kind of talked about, like, getting something in your graveyard that costs 3 or less. So that could be a way to do it. But not being able to cast this on your first, second, or third turns of the game, that obviously impacts, the value that you can have early with this, because if it's in your hand, you're like, oh, unless I can cheat into play in some way, I have to wait till my 4th turn. I'm still saving mana by not paying a lot of mana for it, but still. +1 is draw a card, discard a card, so a nice little loot. Other +1, you may exile a non-land card with mana value 3 or less from your hand. If you do, it becomes plotted. That's interesting, like pre-plotting it, which is nice, and being able to just basically play it for free then on your next turn or any turns after that. -6 until end of turn. Whenever you cast a spell copy, choose targets with a copy. I mean, that's quite powerful. Again, it is whenever you cast a spell, it does not say instant or sorcery, which is typically what you'd see. Probably like a blue, like, hey, let's copy things, like Swarm Intelligence type cards. This does not say that. This is cast a spell, copy it. Doesn't have the reminder text of, like, if it's a permanent spell, you get a, token copy of it. You do. So yeah, a very, very, very powerful effect. Getting to that 6 does not take all that long. Obviously, I mean, you already are very close to getting there just by activating this a couple times. Obviously, you're in blue as well, so proliferate effects can be very good. Yeah, I could see this being in a Super Friends deck. Definitely in a Super Friends deck. Very, very powerful effect. And kind of interesting, again, because there aren't many Planeswalkers, again, that are this low to the ground. Typically, Planeswalkers are just at, like, 3, and that's, like, the low cap for Planeswalkers. This is like, no, I'm less than that, but also kind of like that one Angel. I can't remember what the name of it is, and someone's going to help me in the comments below. But yeah, not being able to play it in the first, second, or third turns of the game is very interesting. So yeah, having to wait a little bit to actually play this out, or again, cheat it out in a different way. There are ways to do it. So yeah, very interesting. Next up, though, this is just a quick showing that, hey, we've seen these cards in leaks, and they are now confirmed, basically. Forlorn Flats, a desert, enters battlefield tapped, enters battlefield, does 1 damage to target opponent, tap for either white or black. I think there was also, like, a teaser from Mark Rosewater, basically, that was like, hey, we're seeing a new type of dual land that never seen before. Deserts. Everyone guessed it. We got there. Thank you. Got there. But yeah, if you're looking for any kind of a, desert-style deck, they can utilize these cards very well, obviously. And also, sure, just like if you have, like, the World Gorger Dragon combo in your deck, and you're utilizing ones like Sunscorched Desert, I think's the one, where, like, deals 1 damage. That could be part of a combo as well, too. I mean, obviously not this one if it's, in a World Gorger Dragon deck, if you got, just Rakdos. You know what I mean. Anyways. Next up, though. And I'm going to go more in-depth with this one because I think it's a very interesting commander. There's so many interesting commanders, but I just picked one. Essentially, I'm going to do budget buys and price your picks after this. Vraska the Silencer. Vraska is back, which I guess makes sense with Jace is back too. What's happening? They're not Phyrexians anymore? I don't know. Anyways, 3/3 Gorgon Assassin with Death Touch that costs 3 mana in Golgari. Whenever a non-token creature opponent controls dies, you may pay 1. If you do, return that card to the battlefield tapped under control. It's a treasure artifact with tap, sacrifice artifact, add 1 mana of any color, and it loses all other card types. Okay. So this is like that one, and now the name is escaping me. This is like Miracle Lord of Bones, whatever that one is. Gosh, whatever that one is. It's the one that turns your creatures into enchantments when they die. So it's kind of like that, but for your opponent's creatures, and it turns them into treasures. Again, it's a treasure artifact with tap, sacrifice artifact, add 1 mana color, and lose all their card types. It does not take out all the other abilities that they have, or their other effects. So yeah, it's just an artifact treasure. It's nothing else, but it still has whatever those abilities are. So unlike Miracle, I think it's Miracle, whatever it is, Lord of Bones. Is that the one? Cost 7. It's in 3 colors. Anyways, this is less abusable infinitely with that because, like, it's, again, whenever your opponent's creatures die. That being said, it's incredibly powerful. Yeah, there are some brutally broken, crazy things you can do with this one. Not quite as easily as that one, but again, this one's a lot lower to the ground. And the just inherent value of this one is a lot more easy to utilize because your opponents are going to have creatures die. As long as you've got mana, you're getting free value out of that, even if it's just, hey, I make a treasure. Yeah, paying 1 mana to make a treasure whenever throughout the game can be very powerful, obviously. But yes, this, yeah, is very powerful. We're going to talk about a lot of ways to play around with this and utilize it in very, very, very spicy ways. And here's the thing, too, like, turning your own creatures, again, like, kind of like with Miracle, Lord of Bones, whatever what it is, turning your own creatures into enchantments is incredibly powerful because, like, creatures are kind of like the weakest card type when it comes to being susceptible to removal. there's just a lot of removal for creatures up there. Again, like any kind of Wrath typically is going to deal with creatures. Not any, but most Wraths deal with creatures. Wrath of God deals with creatures. Sacrifice effects, edicts deal with creatures. Damage effects, blasphemous act deals with creatures. It's more difficult typically to deal with any other kind of permanent than creatures. Typically, again, when it comes to people building their decks, they build in more creature removal. So, when it comes to turning your opponent's creatures into treasures, that's a very powerful thing because let's say they have like a creature that has an activator triggered ability or just a very fantastic like effect on them. Now all of a sudden you turn them into a treasure that is on your side that is no longer a creature, so they get around board wipes like Wraths, essentially. Not like board wipes like Vandal Blast or whatever, but like most Wraths, like Wrath of God, they will get around, and now they just stay in play. And it's harder for your opponents to deal with. And you don't have to sacrifice it for mana if you don't want to, but you can. But yeah, being able to just say like, oh yeah, cool, I've got my your opponent's Viscera Seer now in play under my control as a free sacrifice outlet for me that is harder to deal with than an actual just Viscera Seer. So yeah, it's a very powerful creature, very powerful effect. Yeah, some very powerful spoilers overall. I'm going to be jumping into, like I mentioned, some budget buys and pricier picks for this one. If you're interested in any cards I mentioned on this episode, I think this commander is going to be pretty popular. Yeah, Vraska's return, essentially. So if you're interested in that, make sure you try to pick up some of these sooner rather than later, potentially. That said, there is a list in the description below. Now, that said, let's jump into those budget buys, if I could talk. So first up with the budget buys, and again, budget buys are cards that are less than $1, even within my budget. We've got a very cheap, very efficient 18-cent Innocent Blood. This card is amazing. Sorcery for a single black mana. Each player sacrifices a creature. Now, this does affect you too. Oh no, you're in Golgari. You've got plenty of ways to make plenty of creature fodder out there, like reassembling skeleton things and get themselves back. Bloodghast, which can get itself back out for free, essentially. Or just like creature token fodder, like Golgari Germination, making creature tokens whenever creatures die. All those things. That being said, again, it makes each of your opponents sacrifice one creature too, for again 1 mana. So if you pay this 1 mana, your opponents each sacrifice 1 creature, and then you pay 3 more mana, congratulations, you just made 3 treasure token copies of their creatures. Yeah, there are some really efficient ways to deal with your opponent's creatures very easily. Of course, there's also like destroy target creature if you want to get a specific creature spells, but like when it comes to just like mass amounts of creatures getting taken out, that doesn't take out your own ones as well. I mean, doesn't take out all of your creatures as well. Edict effects are where to go. Playcrafter, this is an edict effect on itself. 3/2 human shaman for 3 mana, enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature planeswalker, each player who can't discards a card. Forcing each of your opponents to sacrifice a creature is very powerful, especially when you have one that you're just going to sacrifice to it itself, like this, most likely. And then, yeah, again, this plus an extra 3 mana is steal 3 creatures, essentially, and turn them into treasures. Next, we've got Anan the Ruined Sage. 4/3 Vampire Shaman for 5 mana. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player sacrifice a non-vampire creature. Having a repeatable sacrifice effect is absurdly powerful again. Basically like, oh, hey, it's your upkeep. Sacrifice one of your creatures. Ha ha ha. I picked this one. Okay, cool. I pay 1, make a treasure out of it. Thank you. It's just like a free, not free, but like you have to pay the 1 mana for, but that's not a lot at all. It's just like free token generation, free treasure generation each turn. And again, potentially even better because those creatures they're sacrificing might have great abilities that you want to use and abuse. Next up, Butcher Malakir. Again, just basically free edict effect. 5/4 Vampire Warrior, 7 mana flyer. Whenever it or other creature control dies, each one sacrifices a creature. So this can really double up on your own edict effects too. If it's like you cast Innocent Blood, you're like, hey, I sacrifice a creature. You all sacrifice 1. Oh, I sacrifice a creature. Butcher Malakir says you sacrifice another creature. So now all of a sudden they're sacrificing 6 creatures instead of just 1 each. 6 creatures. 2 creatures each instead of just 1 each. So 6 creatures in total. Yeah, and as if your creatures are dealt with in any other ways, essentially you're forcing mass sacrifice for your opponents and turning all their things into treasures, which you can utilize for a lot of different ways. Again, like I mentioned earlier, you got access to plenty of ways to make a lot of creature fodder. You're going to be fine. Set yourself up, get a lot of edict effects, and just get going. Whenever 1 or more non-token creatures die, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed. Build triggers only once each turn. Ghoulish Possession, a very good card. Again, this triggers on your opponent's creatures too, so keep that in mind. Getting a lot of creature fodder out can be very good for you to just, well, have an army when your opponents don't have an army. And then also just, yeah, have things sacrificed when you need to. Next up, Rise the Dreadmarn. This one's like a mass army out of nowhere. Foretell it for a single black mana. Create X 2/2 black zombie berserker creature tokens for X number of non-token creatures that died this turn. This can make you quite a bit of creatures out of nowhere. So it can be a game-ending card, or again, just one be like, oh, okay, cool, I innocent blooded. Everyone sacrificed 1. Yeah, I need some more creature fodder out there. I'll pay 1 mana to play this, and all of a sudden I get 4 more zombies. Yay, good for me. Next up, Lich Knight's Conquest. Source for 5 mana. Sacrifice any artifacts, enchantments, and or tokens. Turn them into creature cards to greater the battlefield. This one, again, can basically utilize those token, I mean, they're not tokens, but they're artifact treasures or whatever they are. Again, they're artifacts. creatures that you stole, sacrificing them to get your own creatures back out of the graveyard as well. A very, very powerful card. Kind of like Reprocess, which is a bit more expensive. I probably should put that in the price your picks. Remember to get that one too, but yeah, that draws you cards. Next up, you have access to a lot of great ramp. You're in green. Who knew? Frontier Siege. Enters the battlefield, choose cons or dragons. In this case, you're going to choose cons. Beginning of each of your main phases, add green, your mana pool. Being able to get 4 free mana on your turn to work with is absurdly good, especially when you have a commander that has, you know, again, an ability where it's like, hey, or trigger more so, hey, can you pay up? You took out those creatures. I'd like you to pay up so we can actually get some treasures out of them. So being able to turn this mana essentially into not a permanent resource, because those treasures aren't necessarily permanent because you can utilize them for mana. I mean, I guess if it's a mana dork, it is permanent, basically. But yes, being able to turn that into at least temporary mana, or again, a absurd amount of value. Again, if you get something like, I don't know, like Avacyn, if you get Avacyn and all your things are indestructible now because you just stole your opponent's Avacyn essentially and turned into a treasure, congratulations. And again, that's why Edict effects are sometimes just a lot better than Destroy effects because, yeah, you can take out like indestructible things like that. Horizon Stone, another example. If you would lose unspent mana becomes colorless instead. Again, being able to just store up a ton of mana can be absolutely massive with this kind of a commander, because again, you want to make sure that you have that mana available when you need to utilize it, when your opponent's creatures are taken out here, there, or anywhere. Again, just literally throughout the game, their creatures are going to get taken out, whether you're edict affecting them, destroying them, or not. Just in combat even, they're going to get taken out. So being able to make sure you have that mana can be absolutely huge. Age of the Iron Throne, yes, very good. Commander creatures you don't have, whenever an artifact or creature you control is from the grave from the battlefield, just lose 1 life. Again, we already talked about how with this kind of a deck, yeah, let's make a bunch of creature fodder. Let's sacrifice those with edict effects, force opponents to sacrifice things too, drain opponents with this, with that, and then also, hey, this counts artifacts hitting the graveyard too. So those creatures that we stole that we turn into artifact tokens, not artifact tokens, just artifacts. I keep slipping up on that. They're not tokens. It's just like the opponent's creature is an artifact. Everyone believe it. Yay. Maybe a little designation on it could help. But yes, being able to sacrifice those treasures now to drain opponents as well can be a great finisher for you too. And also get a ton of life as well. Vanguard Marauder, whenever an artifact is put in a grave from the battlefield, you may gain 5 life. Any graveyard from the battlefield, any artifact, doesn't have to be one you control or not, does not matter. Yes, you are going to be gaining an absurd amount of life with this. Basically, again, you take an opponent's creature that just died, you paid a mana, you made it into an artifact treasure. Congratulations. When you decide to utilize that treasure, you get 5 life just for utilizing it. So this can gain you an absurd amount of life, pad your life total an obnoxious amount. Next up, Dictative Arabos. Need I say more? Whenever a creature you control dies, you sacrifice a creature, flash it in. Basically, a much more expensive version, money-wise, not mana value-wise, than Butcher Malakir. There's also this, and then, there's another one that costs 1 less, but it's not flash. Can't remember the name right now. Costs 1, black. You know what I mean. Great Pact? There we go. Anyways, Disciple of the Vault. 1/1 Human Cleric for 1 mana. Whenever artifacts be grave from the play, you may have target opponent lose 1 life. Again, being able to drain opponents for when your artifacts are in the graveyard, including those treasures that you're basically stealing. Great. Next up, Grim Hireling, a 3/2 Tiefling Rogue. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat to a player, create 2 treasure tokens. That's already absurdly powerful. There's a reason why this is $9. That being said, pay X, sacrifice X treasures, target creature gets -X until turn, act from the sorcery. So you can take out your opponent's creatures to turn them into treasures, to sacrifice those treasures to take out your opponent's creatures. Magic. Next up, Revel in Riches. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's another way to win with this pretty easily. Whenever a creature opponent controls dies, create a treasure token. Ironic. And then also, beginning of your upkeep, you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. Basically now, whenever your opponent's creatures die, they become 2 treasure tokens. You get a treasure, and then you turn them into a treasure. So literally, if just 5 of your opponent's creatures die, and you pay the mana, you can just win the game if this sticks around. It's probably not going to stick around, but it's also going to give you a lot of value why it's out there. Also, Maret Master. Yeah, it's just above $1. When I was putting this together, I was like, price your picks above $1. Budget buys. Yes, Maret Master. Oh, it's above $1. 1/3 Human Artificer, Fabricate 3. You're going to want to get those counters on this most likely versus the servos. Whenever artifact you can spell to grave from the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to its power. Drain an opponent for 4 every single time you sacrifice an artifact, including those treasures that you're stealing from your opponents, essentially. Grossly impactful. Another one to consider, though, that might not be as apparent, Panharmonicon. Artifact for 4. Whenever an artifact or creature if an artifact or creature in the battlefield causes a triggered ability opponent you control to trigger, that ability triggers this whole time. Again, your commander is turning your opponent's creatures into artifacts that are coming into play under your control. So if they have any ETBs, you get those. And there's plenty of great ETBs out there, like say like Mold Drifter. Cool, your opponent gets the Mold Drifter. Good for them. They get their 2 cards drawn. You take out that Mole Drifter, or if they evoked it, you just pay 1. You get a copy of that. That's a treasure. Enters the battlefield. Panharmonicon. I double that up, and I get twice the value. So yeah, that's going to be quite the good thing. But now as this episode is coming to a close, it's time for me to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know your thoughts on all these brand new cards. A lot of really exciting ones. Let me know your thoughts on my picks for Vraska as well. If you're interested in any of those cards, make sure you check out those cards in the card list link in the description below. Stay tuned to the channel for more exciting quick takes and spoilers. My goodness, this is the start of day 1, and already a lot of crazy things are happening, including Jace being back and at 2 mana for some reason, but you can't play it until turn 4. Anyways, let me know what your thoughts are on all these in the comments below. Stay tuned to this channel, and of course, as always, thanks again, and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.